Okay, we're going to again look at some dividing with polynomials, except today we're going to learn a different method called synthetic division. In the last notes, we looked at how to divide with long division. So let's take a look at this problem, just kind of review how you do that. If you're taking the z squared 2z minus 24 and dividing it, so we write our division bar here, divided by z minus 4, we go through and see what's left over when we do this. So we start by taking z squared and dividing by z and see what's left. So if we took z squared divided by z, there would be 1z left over, and we write that up here. Then we multiply back through. So we take the z, we distribute and multiply to both things. So z times z is z squared. Z times negative 4 is going to be minus 4z. Now we're subtracting both of these. Okay, so if we subtract this, z squared minus z squared, that's going to be 0. Here now we got 2z squared minus, because we got a minus sign out here, minus another negative 4. Minus a negative actually turns into plus, and so we end up with 6z here when we subtract those, because we're subtracting a negative. Okay, now you bring down the next term here, drop it down, and we repeat the process. So now we're trying to see, well, what do we get when we take 6z divided by a z? And that would be 6. So up here we put a plus 6. Now we multiply that back through to both terms. So if we multiply, we get 6z. And then if we times 6 by negative 4, we get negative 24. Now we're subtracting this. 6z minus 6z, that's 0. That cancels out. Again, here we end up with minus a negative. Minus a negative. So negative 24 minus negative 24, that's like plus. Negative 24 plus 24 is 0. So there's no remainder. And our answer ends up being then z plus 6. Okay. Today we're going to look at another method called synthetic division. It's similar, but it kind of takes our division problem and actually turns it into a multiplication problem. The first thing you're going to do when you start the synthetic division process is change it to a multiplication problem. And we do that by taking what we're dividing by, setting it equal to 0, and seeing what that is. So if we set this equal to 0, and we add 4 to both sides, we get that z would be equal to 4. And so we're going to write that number in like a little box here to help us remember that's what we get. Okay. Then what you're going to do is drop all the coefficients down. Coefficients are the numbers in front of the variable. So here there's a 1, so we're going to put a 1. The next coefficient is a 2. The last coefficient is 24, and it's minus 24, so we're going to put that negative with it. Okay. All right, here's how this process works. The first number, you're just going to simply drop down to our answer. Next, like I said a couple times, we're changing this to a multiplying problem. So we're going to take our number in the box, we're going to times these two numbers together, and we're going to write the result over here. So 1 times 4 is 4. We're going to write the result in the next column over. Then what we're going to do is add these up. Okay, because we're kind of doing the opposite. When we did long division, we were dividing and subtracting. With this, we're timesing and adding. So 2 plus 4 here is going to be 6. And now we repeat the process. We're going to times these together and write it in the next column over. So 4 times 6 is 24. Again, we're adding these columns up. 24, negative 24 plus 24 is 0. And this is just like the 0 was here. This last number is our remainder. So we got that. This divided in exactly perfectly. Now, these numbers 1 and 6 that we have here are part of our answer, but we kind of took the x's out when we were writing these numbers. We now need to put the x's back in, or the z's in this case. So what we got to do is list out what these are. Now, before when we took them out, the first one was z squared. We don't want to write our answer as z squared. plus 6z. Those were in the columns, that's what they were before. We did some division, okay? And so our z's have changed. If we take and we are taking a z squared and dividing by a z, that's going to leave us with z now as our biggest one. So our first variable here when we put our variables back in should be z to the first power. So we end up with a 1z plus, and now our next one shouldn't have any numbers, so it'd be 1z plus 6 or just z plus 6. Same answer we got over here, just a different way of doing it, called synthetic division. Let's try that out with some more problems here. Let's try another one. We're going to do synthetic division now on this one. Okay, so first step again, we want to take what we are dividing by, x plus 3, put it equal to 0, so it changes it from a division to a multiplying problem. So if we solve this for x by subtracting 3, we get negative 3. That's our going to be our multiplying number. Let's put it in a box so we remember that's separate. Now we want to drop all the coefficients down. 2, 3, negative 4, since this is minus, and 15. Okay, so now our process again. First one you just drop straight down. Don't start multiplying or you're going to get it wrong. So drop the first one down. Now the multiplying begins. We're going to take these two numbers, times them, and write the result in the next column over. So negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Now we add. Okay, add these up. 3 plus negative 6 is negative 3. Now we multiply again. Our number in the box, negative 3 times another negative 3 that we have here, is going to give us positive 9. Write it in the next column over. Add again. Negative 4 plus 9 is 5. Multiply. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Add these up, you get 0. Your last one is always your remainder. And we don't have a remainder on this one because it came out to be 0. So now we just need to add put our x's back in. We were taking x to the third power here. That was our biggest degree, divided by an x. So our biggest one should be an x squared. So x squared, x. Our last one's not going to have anything because that is a constant term, just like this one didn't have an x. It's x to the 0. So our answer is 2x squared minus 3x plus 5. You get the same answer if you did long division. Okay, let's try another one. Number 2 on your note sheet. Again, we want to divide this out. Okay, so take your first thing, put it equal to 0. Looks like here our multiplier is going to be negative 2. Okay, now put all your coefficients. Now, as you're putting coefficients, just like long division, you got to check that every degree of x is there. So let's check our degrees. 4, 3, 1, 0. If you notice, there's a number missing here. There's no 2. Okay, so just like long division, if there's a degree missing, you need to add a coefficient in there. So because 2 is not there, not present, we need to add a 0 x squared in there. Even though it's not written, we got to think it. So when we're writing our coefficients out, it's going to be 6, 15. We don't want to write negative 28 in x. 0, then negative 28, then negative 6. If you forget, you're going to get the wrong answer. So you got to check that every degree of x all the way down to 0 is in the problem. All right, let's start and go through and do our same process again. First number we just copy. Now we start multiplying. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. Add, you get 3. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Add it with 0 is still negative 6. Negative 2 times negative 6, two negatives are going to make a positive 12. Add, and we get negative 16. Multiply, negative 2 times negative 16. Again, two negatives is going to multiply to a positive 32. Add, and we get 26. Now this time we did end up with a remainder. Okay, and we'll talk about what you do with that. It's pretty similar to what we did before with long division. We got to put our x's in here though too. This one we started with an x to the fourth. We're dividing by x. X to the fourth over x. The biggest one's going to be x cubed on this one. So x cubed, x squared, x and constant. So our answer is 6x cubed. We need to put a plus in here because there's no sign in between. 3x squared minus 6x minus 16. Now this one we got to put the remainder. Okay, so now you put plus your remainder of 26. Remainders always get written over what you're dividing by, just like with the long division. So what we were dividing by was x plus 2. Okay, that would be the fraction that's left over. So there's our solution for that one. Okay, let's look at number 3. On number 3, now this one kind of presents a new problem to us because with the ones we did before, it was what we were dividing by didn't have a number there. When you end up having a number in front of your x, you need to start by getting that number out of there. So because this x is being multiplied by 2, we want to undo that by starting with division. We want to divide this by 2 so that 2's not there, but we can't just divide that one only by 2. We need to then divide everything in this whole problem by 2. And that'll take care of our issue with that. So those two 2's will cancel out. So let's figure out our multiplier on this one. Now we have x plus, this would be 1/2 here. X plus 1/2 equals 0. So if we solve this by minusing half, we get negative 1/2. So our multiplier on this one is negative 1/2. Now we want to write all our coefficients. Now our first one is not 8 here because we're dividing that by 2. So our first one is going to be 8 divided by 2 is 4. Here we got negative 4 divided by 2. That's going to be negative 2. Here we got, this is like a 1, so 1/2. And 4 divided by 2, that's going to be 2. Now, if we kept going with the problem right now, we'd run into trouble. And the reason is we forgot one. Look at our degrees here. 4, 2, 1, 0. We're missing a 3. So we need a 0x cubed in there. After our 4, we should have a 0. Okay, otherwise you're not going to get the right answer. All right, so now we start, and the process basically remains the same. Drop the first number down, 4. Now we got to do what's negative 1/2 times 4. Well, half of 4 is going to be 2, and since we're dividing a positive 4 by a negative, it's going to be negative 2. All right, add again. 0 plus negative 2 is negative 2. Multiply again. Half of 2 is 1, and since we're taking a negative divided by another negative, it should be positive 1. Add, we get negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1/2 is going to be positive 1/2. If we add half and half, that's 1. 1 times negative half is going to be negative half. And now we add again. 2 plus negative 1/2 is going to be not the easiest one. To figure that out, you could use the calculator if you need to. Whatever you need to do to add that. So if we go 2 plus negative 1/2, we can see what that is. Looks like we get 1.5 for our remainder. You could also add these by trying to get a common denominator. 2 is the same as 2 over 1 plus negative 1/2. You need a common denominator when adding these together. So we could get a common denominator, multiply these both by 2. So we got 4 over 2 minus 1/2. And when you're subtracting this, bottom would be 2. 4 minus 1 on top would be 3/2. 3/2 is the same as 1.5. Okay, so you could write this as 1.5 or you could write it as 3/2. It doesn't make a difference which one you want to do. All right, but however you want to write it, that will be our remainder. Okay, now the answer, when we write this out, again, we got to put our x's back in there. We took an x to the fourth divided by an x. Our biggest one should be x cubed. So that's going to be x cubed, x squared, x to 0 or constant term. And then we got this remainder. So if we write our answer, we can put minus at 1x or just minus x. You don't need to write the 1. Plus 1. Now our remainder. Here's the one thing you got to remember when you're doing this. If we had to divide, like we did when we had to up here, when we divided by all these 2's, okay? We divided by all those 2's and we got this remainder. But our remainder, we know we're going to end up writing over what we're going to divide by here, 2x plus 1. So our remainder is going to get divided. We don't want to divide it twice. So the one thing you're going to have to remember is anytime you divide it up here and you end up with a remainder that's anything besides 0, you need to times it back by that same number. So since we divided by 2 here, we actually need to multiply that back by 2 because we don't want to divide and then again divide again. So our remainder actually comes out to be 3. Our remainder on this one is 3. So over 3 over 2x plus 1. And that would be your answer. You get the same thing if you did long division. A lot of times this remainder will end up being maybe like a decimal like that. That should clue you in on that you need to multiply back. But you're going to have to kind of remember, it's just one of the things about synthetic division. It kind of goes faster in a lot of cases, but there is one thing you got to remember. If you divide, you have to multiply the remainder back. It's just one of the things about using synthetic division. Okay, let's try another one here that has a number like that. So number 4, we see again, number here. So we want to start by dividing everything by 2 here. Okay, so if we do that, these cancel out. Now we got x minus a half equals 0. If we add a half to both sides, we're going to get 1/2 or 0.5, however you want to write it. It doesn't matter. I'll write 0.5 this time. I wrote 1/2 last time. Okay, so that's our multiplier. Let's check if we have all the degrees now. If we look here, 4, 2, 1, 0. Uh-oh, we're missing 3. We need to write a 0x cubed in here. So when we're writing our coefficients, it'll be 4 divided by 2 is 2, 0. 5 divided by 2 is going to be negative 2.5. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. All right, so let's do our same process. First number goes right to the down. Multiply. Half of 2 is going to be 1. Add 1. Half of 1 is half or 0.5. Add negative 2.5 plus half is going to be negative 2. Multiply. Half of negative 2 is negative 1. Add, we get 0. 0.5 times 0 is 0. Add these up and we get 2. Okay, that's our remainder. Okay, just like we talked about now, if you get a remainder, you got to multiply back by what we were dividing by here. So we got to times this by 2 to get our actual remainder, which is going to be 4. So let's write out our answer now. It'd be 2x cubed plus 1x squared minus 2x plus 0. You can write the plus 0 if you want. You don't have to. Plus a remainder of 4 over what we were dividing by, 2x minus 1. That would be the answer. You might possibly also see the same answer if it was like an ACT. They might write it like this. You won't have to write that 1 there. So x squared minus 2x. You don't have to write a plus 0. So it could the answer might also be written like that. Both of those are correct. You just might see the second one on an ACT type multiple choice answer. Okay, let's flip to the back of your sheet. Here's kind of a word problem where you might see this. It says the area of a rectangle is listed. The width of the rectangle is also listed. what would be the length? Well, we know from geometry last year that an area of a rectangle is length times width. If we want to find the length, we would get that by taking the area and dividing by the width. So the length is the area divided by the width. So let's set that up in here. We'd want to take this one right here, and we'd want to divide by this one right here. So it basically turns into a division problem just like we were doing. We can do this with synthetic division. Take what you're dividing by, put it equal to 0, turn it into a multiplication problem. Looks like our multiplier is going to be -1. Write down the coefficients. Let's check. Do we have all our degrees here? 3, 2, 1, 0. Yep, we don't need to, they're all there. So write the coefficients. There's a 1 in front of this x cubed, so 1, 3, 4, 1. Let's see what we get now. Drop the first one down, 1, multiply, -1, add, you get 2, multiply, you get -2, add, you get 2, multiply, -2, add, -1. That's our remainder. So now write your answer out. Answer on this one would be 1x squared plus 2x plus 2. We did have a remainder, so -1 over what we were dividing by, x plus 1. That would be the solution. And since this is a problem, we should write down what it is. Looks like it was in inches, what they told us, inches. All right, one more. This one is talking about a triangle sail on a sailboat. So you got some kind of triangular sail here. They want to know if the area is what's listed here, and the height is x minus 4, so that's the height right here. What is the base going to be? Okay, well, from last year in geometry, area of a triangle is base times height. That would be a rectangle, but we only want half of that since it's a triangle, divided by 2. Okay, so what is the base going to be? Let's solve this little equation over here for b. So first we would have to get rid of what's in the bottom here, times both sides by 2. So now we got 2 times the area equals base times height. We're solving for the base, we want to divide by h. And so it looks like the base is going to be 2 times the area divided by the height. So what we got to do in this problem is start by timesing the area by 2. We want to take what we have up here, this equation, and times it by 2. So basically we got to distribute. We got to multiply each one here by 2 because we got to double the area. So if we do that, our coefficients are going to be 32, -120, -56. Double that's going to be 112, and 2 times -32 is -64. So those are all our coefficients. Now we got to figure out what is our multiplier. Take what's here, x minus 4, set it equals 0, 4. 4 is our multiplier. So now let's do synthetic division, figure out our answer. Remember, drop the first one down, 32. Now start multiplying. 4 times 32. If you need to use a calculator, use a calculator, but that should come out to be 128. Add these two, we get 8. 8 times 4 is 32. -56 plus 32, it's going to come out negative because 56 is bigger than 32. Again, if you need to use a calculator, use one, but it's going to come out to be -24. Multiply. 4 times -24 is going to be a negative because we're multiplying a positive and a negative, -96. Add, and we get 16. Multiply 4 and 16, and you get 64. Add 0. Looks like this one has a remainder of 0. This one divides in perfectly. So we don't need to write anything with the remainder. Now just write your answer out. 32x cubed plus 8x squared minus 24x plus 16. That would be the length of the base in meters. So that's how long the base would be. All right. Now you try some of these out on your practice sheet. If you like the synthetic division way, try it out, and then pick which way you like better, long division or synthetic division.